There's a place for everybody, meaning no matter how niche you think your topic is or your interest, it will be on TikTok.
You can't fool the people out there anymore.
You don't really just scroll through TikTok, you're fully immersed in it.
Yeah.
And that's why people love spending time on the platform every single day.
Is TikTok evolving into a search platform?
Community is at the heart of the platform, so everybody's the community.
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the E-commerce Germany News Podcast. And today I'm delighted to introduce to you my amazing guest, Sahra Al-Dujaili, Head of Brand Partnerships at TikTok, responsible for e-commerce, marketplaces and retail for the DACH region. Sahra and I will delve into an exciting world of possibilities at TikTok and answer two important questions. How can brands that are already active on TikTok be more successful? And how can SMBs, for the first time, get started with TikTok with practical tips from an expert? Sahra, welcome to the show. Very nice to have you here. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you for having me. I'm Sahra, and I have been at TikTok for 3 years now in October. And previously I worked at a big e-commerce company in Germany, and previous to that for a big fashion brand here in Germany. So it's definitely been a wild experience, a very interesting experience being at TikTok for 3 years. And I lead the marketplace retail e-commerce teams. So it's very interesting to see how we've evolved over the last 3 years.
How big is the team that you're managing?
So total would be about 40 people, which is quite a lot of people, but we also take care of a lot of clients. So we want to provide, the support to them, and so about 40 people total.
Well, you seem to have a very busy job, and we appreciate you being here and telling us a little bit about TikTok and your journey there. So you've said you've been there for about 3 years. Yes. How did you come to the idea of working at TikTok? Were you a TikTok user before?
Yes, I had some experience in doing of the first campaigns that went live in Germany when I was still on the brand side. Yeah. And it was fascinating to me because I thought the platform was so unique and different. And it just really sparked my interest. And then we started building teams here and recruiting for the DACH market. Yeah. And I just knew I really wanted to be part of that journey. And here I am, and I'm still here 3 years, and it's been fascinating to work with so many great, talented people.
I'm wondering, throughout these 3 years, there's also been an immense evolution of the platform, right? So that I've been a TikTok user for 4 years, or maybe even a bit longer than that. And years ago, when I first got onto the platform, my wife was telling me like, hey, Effe, what are you doing on this platform with like 14-year-old kids, like you're an adult, So that was like a funny little anecdote we had. But then again, I knew that it's booming, the download numbers, like the platform was booming. And so that being said, now we see that TikTok is like really influential for many brands. It's almost as it's an essential platform for all the brands to succeed and reach their target audiences, right? Right. How do you see this evolution?
Yeah, it's definitely been an evolution because, like you said, when we started, it was mainly known as an awareness platform and maybe something for a younger audience group. And now, over the last 3 years, we've matured and grown as a platform along with our clients really and our community, because it's now, like you said, it's if we speak about demographics, it's actually a very mainstream demographic, and it isn't just for the younger audience. So the audience above 25 is growing really quickly. So it's no longer a place for just part of the community. It's a place for everybody, really. Yeah. And also in terms of objectives, if you think about it, the way we've evolved is it's a full funnel platform today, and meaning you can reach all of your goals, right? Whether it's branding, whether it's performance, it is matured as a platform to any objective or strategy that you could have as a business. Yeah. And that's definitely different from 3 years ago.
Yeah. I would say so as well. From what I observe, more and more brands, you see them commenting under organic posts, you see them engaging, like they're really, and also the platform itself comes with its own authenticity, right? So it's none of the content that I'm seeing personally is like a copy of what these brands are posting elsewhere. It's like very unique content dedicated to TikTok, because otherwise it wouldn't perform well, right?
Yeah.
The whole idea is to entertain, is what I observe, right? So entertainment is quite high on the priority list.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's an important point, because we're actually not a social platform, but we're an entertainment platform. And that means that the way people come and show up, the community comes to be entertained, and they're in a discovery mindset, which means they're curious, right? They want to be inspired, they want to learn, and that's a different type of behavior on the platform, because you don't really just scroll through TikTok, you're fully immersed in it.
Yeah.
And that's why people love spending time on the platform every single day. And the content is unique because it's relevant to you, and it doesn't, sometimes we also get questions from brands, right? Do I need to have a lot of followers? And we say it's actually all about the content that you post, because the algorithm will show you the content that's relevant to you regardless of how many followers that person has. So
it's actually no surprise that there are content creators out there that have 1 or 2 videos and they go viral because the content is so funny. There was this lady that asked everyone, like, can we stop posting videos of something, and then all the other things, that it's called stitch, like when you add your video to the others, and it was like this humongous video at the end, like all these people interacting with the original content. It's I mean, I personally think it's really bringing different subcultures together in one platform. There are pigeonholes that you can really get into. There are like all kinds of, there's a little bit of everything from different varieties,
Yeah, it's a very interesting observation, because it's, like you said, community is at the heart of the platform. So everybody's the community. It isn't only, you know, certain creators with a lot of followers. It is everybody, and the platform is fueled by that community, because a lot of times something will come up like a trend, right? And it's created by the community that's different, and that's also changed maybe the way that brands interact, because previously, and back in the day, it was mainly, you know, following maybe a marketing calendar, or the brands would say, this is important to us, we should put this on a platform. But today it is on TikTok, we've revolutionized maybe a little bit how that is working. The dialogue between brands and community is on eye level, if not even driven by the community first. And culture is an important part, because TikTok is also about culture. And like you said, there's a place for everybody, meaning no matter how niche you think your topic is or your interest, it will be on TikTok. So sometimes we have, you know, you'd be surprised. Brands sometimes assume, oh, I have a certain product that's very niche, and or a message that's very niche, and it wouldn't resonate with a wider crowd. But the truth is, on TikTok it does, because there's, like you said, a lot of subcultures, and it's a whole variety of culture, and I think that makes it unique. And in many ways, if you think about as a brand, you sometimes think you have a product category that's successful. Let's say you're a retailer or an e-commerce retailer, and you have maybe fashion and beauty and home supplies, and you just assume, oh, my beauty products will be the most relevant category to the audience on TikTok. But when you actually go on the platform and search and look what people are talking about already, maybe it's the cleaning supplies, right? And there's a whole community about cleaning and being passionate about hacks, how to clean your home. And so sometimes we always say to the brands, just be open for that, like you said, and have a dialogue and be curious about what are you being talked about already on the platform.
What you say, one thing that I found very interesting is that the brands don't even know exactly what's going to perform. So I guess testing becomes very important, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It is. A lot of times brands ask themselves, whether they're small brands or big brands, how do I start on TikTok, or how can I manage to be successful on TikTok? And that's exactly what we tell them, because we say test and learn mindset is important, because first of all, go on the platform, see what people are talking about in terms of your brand or your product already, right? And find a way to engage with the community with what's already been being spoken about. And the other thing is, when you talk about testing, it's important to understand, so what is it you want to achieve on TikTok, right? It could be a various type of strategies, from brand love, brand awareness, all the way through mid-funnel to conversion.
Yeah.
What is it that you want to achieve as a brand? But then be open to test and learn, because in terms of creative, it's important to know creative fuels the performance of whatever the goal is, right? And maybe you think a creator asset or creative TikTok would work really well for an app install campaign. And then you test maybe 2 different varieties of creatives. Maybe one is with a creator, one is just with a product, and see what works best, right? And adjust your strategy. So we definitely encourage a test and learn mindset,
Yeah.
Especially for e-commerce brands, because at the end of the day, you have certain KPIs you want to hit.
Yeah.
And to get there, it takes a test and learn roadmap. And that's how we work with our clients. And that's actually the success to many of the brands today on TikTok.
Yeah, and also there are platform specifics that the user expects, for example. Instead of a real background, it's very common to use like a background within the app and just like put a picture and talk about the picture with this virtual background. You know what I mean? So there are a lot of platform-specific expectations that the user feels, okay, I'm in the right place. This is the type of content that speaks to me, yeah? So understanding what resonates with the end users is super, super important, I would say.
Yeah, and using the platform, like you said, there's so many built-in features that make it quite easy. So the one you're referring to, the green screen, is super popular because it's easily produced. And that's also a change in the industry of it isn't necessarily the high glossy content piece that works. It is oftentimes just a creative hook that works, right? And a lot of brands also rely on, for example, in-house creators or somebody who just shows a little bit more of what it's like day to day. And they use the features that are in the app, like you said, you know, the filters, the effects, the green screens, the backgrounds, and also the, you know, the font that you can use within the app. So it has, the app itself has so many options for you to create content quite easily.
So you don't necessarily need a video production app separately.
Yeah, and it's to encourage also the community to be active on the platform.
Yeah.
Because they're essentially at the heart of the platform, and that's something I would also say in terms of mindset is tested. Don't assume that maybe the way you've been producing content before previously is going to be the same on TikTok, because it could be much easier and less complex to produce the content that resonates.
Yeah, definitely. And just a couple of sentences ago, you were talking about discovery, right? So especially when we're talking about brands, the users out there that you used to go to Google, let's say, search for a certain topic, let's say it's a recipe, let's say it's something that they want to do, like a do-it-yourself project that they want to do at home. There are a lot of, for example, I personally find it quite interesting. There are lots and lots of people that started to build their own vans, like a caravan type of RV type of thing from scratch, doing it themselves and like sharing videos of the entire journey. But then again, the whole journey is also changing, I believe, because like people that used to go to Google and first engage with text content and then maybe move on to videos are starting with video content in the first place nowadays. So like is TikTok evolving into a search platform in that sense? Yeah,
so the visual discovery is important because it's easier, it's more accessible, like you said, and it is, and TikTok has started that revolution. Today, short mobile video is the new normal. Yeah. And it is an easier, more accessible way to learn about anything that you're interested in, whether it's a recipe, like you said, and, or how to build a table, or, you know, researching hotel recommendations. Yeah. So from all of these different industries or topics, you can find something that's very condensed to the essence, right? It's easier to watch maybe, let's say, a 30-second recipe than having one that's several minutes long. So there's so much content out there today that visual discovery is just more easy and accessible. And we do see people searching for what they're interested in on TikTok, and that's definitely growing. And a great opportunity for brands to be part of that search, right? So if you search a recipe for a Friday night dinner, if you know you're a food brand, that's the perfect place to appear, right? Yeah. And offer some value to the community, because it's not just about selling your product, but it's also maybe educating about a product or showing them how you cook it. If you've never cooked a a meal, then maybe you need some help and guidance from the brands too.
And then when we look at the other side with the brands, for example, if you're HelloFresh, then you can tap into it and say like, hey, here's how to, here's how this recipe is so easy, and you can easily cook it. And you know what? You don't even have to go shopping for it. Just as an example, like there are many ways for brands to tap into this in-context organic platform, you know?
Absolutely. And there are certain types of products that also need some, or brands that need some education, right? So if you think about maybe the beauty industry matching a certain shade of foundation or lipstick, then of course it's so much easier to see in real life, you know, which shade could I look at that also helps accelerate the purchase, because you want to at least get really close to your perfect shade, if not, you know, find it right there. And maybe also in terms of technique, how do you apply a certain product that needs some educating around it? And it's in a very entertaining way, like you said, so it doesn't feel like you're having to learn about something. It's more you're being entertained and you're learning about something, a product that you're looking for, or that you maybe didn't know you look for, and you find it on TikTok. But it's an interesting point, because we get a lot of questions from brands. Is it a contradiction between entertaining and having a product that you want to sell? And if you think about, we have a format called video shopping ads, where it basically combines both. So you see the creative full screen, where someone is maybe showing you how to apply a lipstick.
Like live shopping?
It's not live, it's an in-feed ad, but it is basically somebody showing you how to apply the product or doing a certain makeup look, and then you see cards at the bottom rotating where the product is linked and that you can click on, right, if you wanted to purchase the product. So it isn't a contradiction to want to discover.
Is this available in German?
This is available today, video shopping ads are widely adopted already today by many brands from many different industries, from fashion, beauty, food. And it is basically bringing together the best of both worlds, the entertaining and the product link. And so when we talk about discovery and visual discovery, it's really interesting to see that this also drives action, in the sense of people instantly buy products because they have been inspired and are convinced that it's for them. So 1 in 3 people buy instantly, almost within an hour, having seen content on TikTok. And I think that's a huge opportunity, like you said, for brands. Because it is about entertaining and discovery, but this also leads to action by the community.
And but in terms of live shopping, you also see the preference of the European users that are a little bit different than, let's say, in other markets, like in Asian markets, because if I'm not mistaken, 2022, there's in April or so, TikTok wanted to test live shopping in European markets. Like they did a test in the UK whereby they noticed that it's not really resonating with the users yet. And then how do you see that evolving for the future?
Yeah, we're definitely testing it, because there's a huge interest in engaging live. Because what could you do on a live? You can also ask questions. You know, there's a different level of interaction, let's say. But we're testing it, obviously wanting to give the best experience to the community, and it's definitely something that is part of our strategy. But you know, we have to also see how the tests are going in selective markets to be able to then adapt it to other markets. So, but it is actually today already possible to have live streams, right? And you can advertise to bring people to the live stream. And a lot of brands do it. Let's say fashion shows are super popular for live streaming, or events that brands do, right? Where you can have a bit of closer look of, you know, almost like you're actually there yourself. So that's already happening today.
So it's probably a matter of time until that becomes a thing in European markets as well.
I mean, it remains to be seen, right? How, like you said, how is the user behavior in terms of interacting in that live stream and you know, buying products off it. There's so it's definitely a priority, but remains to be seen how we can build it for other markets. Yeah, definitely. And same with, I mean, today you can already, in the video shopping ads, for example, right? You have a little bit of that. You can actually get to the product because it's linked, and you can click on it, and then you check out on the website of the retailer or the e-commerce brand. And that's possible as of today, so you don't really need any other formats. And a lot of brands are doing it already today in Germany, yeah.
I'm a huge fan. I work in marketing, and I'm a huge fan of eating your own dog food or dog fooding, you know. And so maybe a personal question to you at that point. What are some brands that you interact with? Maybe did you find yourself in a situation like you organically consumed a lot of content from a brand, and at some point they had a live feed, and then you were influenced to buy a certain product from them, for example? I know it's hard. Yeah. It's going to be hard for you because you work with these brands on day-to-day interactions. But
yeah, so I would say in terms of interacting, it's very interesting to see that a lot of, let's say, supermarket brands have created a love brand for themselves on the platform because they've really built a strong community. Yeah. And that is something that's very valuable because it's part of your strategy to have a community that's engaged with you. And if you think about, you know, even all the way to employer branding, right? A lot of recruiting is a big topic today in retail, for example. Where do you actually recruit younger people for jobs, right? Yeah. And so this isn't specific just to supermarkets, but also for other brands across other verticals, but it is, or industries. And it's interesting to see how you can actually, you know, show your brand or show up like, brands can show up like real people, basically. Yeah, yeah. And that's the secret sauce. And all the way to...
And authenticity, right?
Yeah, being authentic and showing what it's like, because what better way to show what it's like to work at a certain brand than from somebody who's working at the brand already and maybe is, you know, doing an apprenticeship or something at the brand currently, and they're trying to recruit for the next year. So that's definitely something showing that the impact of TikTok isn't limited to product, right? It's also about how are you perceived as a brand, brand love, brand awareness, but also possibly wanting to work for a brand.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it also takes a lot of courage from brands because many brands have very strict guidelines how they communicate to their customers out there. And when you look at some brands on TikTok, like Ryanair, for example, I find them personally very amusing on TikTok. They do very absurd stuff, like, you know, these eyes within the cockpit and all that stuff. But then again, you notice also there's a reflection of their culture because someone has complete autonomy, obviously, to do all these absurd things that end users seem to love. You know what I mean? So the management allows the social media team, hey, you know what? You do your thing. You know how to do it best. We won't touch it.
Yeah. It's an interesting evolution as well because it is, first of all, brands show up like real people on TikTok, and that's what the community loves, and that's why they favor a brand. But if you think about, there's really big brands, traditional brands, let's say, just because you're a traditional brand doesn't mean that you're known on TikTok. So by showing up like real people and being authentic and relatable and entertaining the community, you have a chance of being perceived as an interesting brand, right? And vice versa, if you're a small brand and you think nobody knows my brand yet or my product, then it's also a great opportunity to be seen by an audience that maybe you don't reach on other platforms or usually haven't been reaching. So it is definitely, we always say to our brands, show up like real people because it is rewarded by the community, like you said, by interaction, you know, by questions. And there's actually a lot to learn for brands from this dialogue that's happening in the comments and how they're reacting to the videos, if they're stitching it. So we have a few examples. One is Like Meat, which is meatless
vegan product.
Vegan product, right? And they started this campaign with a creator called Clemens Brock, and they basically involved the community, and they also let them vote and like give their feedback on the vegan döner, the like döner, and it just was such a successful, impactful movement on the platform that they actually increased sales in the offline stores. So it just shows you that it isn't limited to just buying something online, but also in traditional retail. Yeah.
So I guess you worked with them on some of these content pieces. And how did they track the ROI? Like how can you effectively correlate between like your online ads or like the content that you push on TikTok you don't necessarily know that these were TikTok users when they buy from the offline store. I mean, you can obviously see the spike after a certain campaign, but apart from that, how do you establish that link?
Yeah, so we're constantly evolving also our measurement, because that's part of maturing as a platform as well, right? So whether it's offline sales or online sales. But it is, we have other examples where post-purchase surveys, for example, right, give you a bit of, let's say, an indicator of how much does TikTok contribute to your media mix in terms of sales, and for you to gauge a bit more accurately whether this impact is actually driven by TikTok. So Snox, this is an official case studies as well, did a post-purchase survey where they assessed that actually TikTok has a bigger impact than they previously thought by doing post-purchase surveys as an instrument, right? That's part of us also evolving, because there's definitely correlation. Like you said, it transcends almost the platform to the point of sale. And Book Talk, for example, is a great phenomenon. So we've seen 2 years ago, you know, it started happening on the platform. So the community would, you know, give book recommendations, or people would say, if you like this book, then you probably also like another book, because, you know, so kind of a recommendation among the community. And it grew to such a strong phenomenon that today, when you walk into a physical store, a bookstore, you see Book Talk in the aisles, right? You see, you know, branding of this as seen on TikTok, you know, this book was recommended on TikTok. And it does have a bit more impact to outside of the platform. It transcends the platform.
What I really like about this evolution is that, I mean, I often give this example that you no longer go to your grandma and ask for washing powder, right? So you do a quick search, you take a look at some other people, you get influenced by people out there. You know what I mean? And to me, it's like this interconnectivity between real people giving real opinions. And at the end of the day, the brands that have just a good product will eventually be successful. Because, and this is like, you can't fool the people out there anymore. You know what I mean? You can't, it's not a one-way street. You cannot fool them, because sooner or later, someone will say, hey, by the way, this is shitty, you know, like someone will complain, and that's a real feedback that you get. So, and the way we perceive feedback as users is evolving, in my opinion, right? And that has an impact on how we get influence as people, how we help brands then at the end of the day drive sales and reward them for giving us a good product.
Absolutely, and it's even more so, the dialogue that you're describing is actually fueled by the community, like you said. So there's feedback means good and bad, right? It isn't necessarily just saying, oh, the product is great, or this brand is great. We also see that it is an infinite loop of this conversation. So it isn't, because remember, we used to think about a classic marketing funnel where, you know, there's a beginning and there's an end, in the sense of there's awareness, and then you go through the mid-funnel all the way to conversion. And it isn't linear anymore. So like you said, it's an ongoing loop. So we always refer to it as an infinity loop, meaning a lot of times as a brand, you don't start the conversation, but the community has already started the conversation about, I just discovered this great cleaning hack, or I just discovered this great product. And they are the ones posting the content on this specific topic, right? Yeah. And so there's a dialogue about, oh, I also bought it because this also influences and fuels purchase by others in the community, who then also review it themselves and feed it back into the content loop on the platform. And this is a great way for brands to then amplify it, right? Yeah. And be part of that conversation.
Absolutely.
But it is infinite. There's infinite options, and it doesn't end, so there's no beginning and end to it. And in many ways, what you describe is valuable to brands in the sense of learn about your product, right? Even if something isn't working well, what is it that people are saying about it? It's very valuable feedback. And at the end of the day, the engagement that you get on TikTok as a brand is unparalleled, and it's really valuable for you. Yeah.
I can really relate to this from a personal experience. You know, I'm a father of 2 kids, and at some point, you have several things that you want to take a look at, right? So you want to buy things that are sustainable. In my case, for example, I want to buy things that are good for my kids, like no chemicals or something. And at the end, I also want to support good practices out there, like no worker is being abused, like 3 different pillars, let's say. And it gets very complex. sooner or later, then you find yourself in a situation, okay, either I have to read pages and pages of stuff and inform myself, whereas I have no time for that, or I find people to influence me that I trust. And for me, this word trust is becoming more important than ever. Would you agree?
Trust is absolutely important, but credibility comes with it in the sense of maybe you also want to hear different opinions about the topic that you're interested in, right? And on TikTok, when you look for the content and you search on what you described, you hear different voices about it, right? So the community is credible because there's variety in the community, just like there's variety in the topics. And because you have the chance of, learning from different people about a topic that is valuable to you personally, that creates trust for you as well, right? And and brands can have a voice in that too, but it is definitely on eye level. So I think when we talk about evolution of how the dialogue and how credible dialogue is perceived, it's also because community means that the brands and the creators are on eye level, and it isn't, the conversation isn't just driven by, one or the other. Like you said, it's not a one-way street, it's a two-way street for sure. Absolutely. And there's many different examples if you think about, sometimes the community sparks a trend or, a conversation about a certain product or a brand, but sometimes it's also the brand starting it, right? So it's also not one or the other, it could be both. And if you think about last year, the TikTok award that we went to Essence for, selling out a product. Things can resonate with the audience if you do it in a TikTok native way in terms of the content using, whatever feels native to the platform, the features, the in-app features, like the green screen, the type, the fonts that are possible or available, right? So having an interesting hook means that you open up this dialogue with the community and you get a lot back, and in many ways they also engage with you maybe on a more personal level that you don't see usually.
This is very insightful. We usually love to, in our podcast, we usually love to break it down to three takeaways or three do's and don'ts at the end. There I want to, especially for our smaller merchants and sellers or e-commerce businesses that might be relatively new on TikTok. Maybe they're not even on TikTok. So Sahra, can you break it down to three to-dos for them? Like get started with these three takeaways, and maybe they can benefit from that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say one is go on TikTok and search for your product or your brand and see what people are already talking about. Because as many times as people think nobody's talking about my brand, they're probably already talking about you. So number one would be go and search what is being discussed already. How are you being perceived, right? Just be open to it and find out what's already happening on TikTok. Two would be having a test and learn mindset, because especially as a small business, you want to think about your strategy, of course, but then how you get there requires a test and learn mindset, meaning, let's say you take different creative routes, because creative also fuels the performance, right? And having a variety, testing certain different types of TikTok videos to see which one works best, and then you adjust your media strategy to that. So that would be number two, test and learn. And number three would be just get started, because everybody started small. So a lot of times when you look at brands that are perceived as being successful today, they also just started at some point and doing number one, number two, basically trying to get and grow their community. So I would say don't be hesitant, just get started, and try things on TikTok to see where you can grow as a brand.
Thank you so much for your time, and also walking us through the path of the evolution at TikTok in the last couple of years. It's been a great conversation.
Oh, thank you so much. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the E-commerce Germany News Podcast. If you did, make sure to give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, and follow us on our channels. Feel free to also recommend this podcast to your contacts and friends that may want to know more about e-commerce, digital marketing, and success stories. Thank you very much for listening and watching, and see you on the next episode.